Hi everyone, I'm Nika. I'm 23 years old. This is Samantha, my best friend. Now she looks like Robinson Crusoe, who lived on a deserted island. She has dirty hair and torn clothes. Unfortunately, it's all my fault that she is in this state. But let's go back to the beginning. Samantha and I have been friends since junior high, and we have always had a good relationship. Samantha was like a battery that never ran out. She never sat still and was constantly in motion. Plus, she was incredibly beautiful. And half of all the guys in school and college were in love with her. I always liked being around her because I got a lot of attention too. But it was not a one-sided relationship. Samantha valued me, and she said that all these guys weren't worth even one half of me. Unfortunately, her life has changed a lot. And as a consequence, so has mine. One photographer offered Samantha a chance to be in an unusual photo shoot. Samantha dressed up in a chic evening dress and we went to an abandoned building. This idea was interesting and the pictures turned out really cool. But then Samantha wanted to take a picture on the roof. She posed right on the edge and got into some really dangerous positions. Suddenly she lost her balance and she fell down. For a couple of seconds, the photographer and I just stood in complete shock. Then we raced down. Thank God the building wasn't tall and she hadn't broken anything, but she hit her head really hard and she had to be taken to the hospital. The doctors did all the necessary tests and it turns out that Samantha was very lucky. She only had a concussion. She could have broken every bone in her body or even died. She was prescribed some medication in order to stay on bed rest. For a few days, I was with Samantha all the time to help her with household chores while she was recovering. Everything seemed to be all right, but after a while, she began to notice that her vision was deteriorating. I was very scared for her and literally dragged her to the doctor. His diagnosis was disappointing. Samantha had something wrong with her optic nerves and needed surgery, but the fact is, she flatly refused to get it. She was very scared. And no one could convince her to do the surgery, even under the threat of complete loss of vision. And soon it happened. Samantha wore glasses for weeks, and she felt fine. But one morning, she was in the shower, and she didn't see that the floor was wet, so she slipped and fell. And she hit her head again. She was able to call me and ask for help, and I rushed as fast as I could and took her to the hospital again, but the injury was already irreversible. We sat together in the ward and cried. That day, Samantha completely lost her sight. Samantha had no family, so only I could help her. And from that moment on, I moved into Samantha's house and helped her with everything. Oh, it was incredibly hard. She literally had to learn to live another way and acquire new skills to live in this world. Walking was a challenge. And forget about reading. The alphabet for the blind was especially difficult for her, and she'd just drop her hands and get frustrated when trying to learn it. She eventually fell into a deep depression. Samantha only left her room a couple of times a day to eat. The rest of the time, she was just lying there and listening to music. I almost always heard a soft cry. It wasn't easy for me either. A lot of responsibilities fell on my shoulders. I looked after the house, cleaned, cooked, helped Samantha get dressed, and so much more. I was very sad to see my friend wither like a flower, and I felt guilty about it. If I'd been more persistent, I could have talked her into the surgery, and everything would have been fine. So I was constantly looking for ways to cheer her up. And once I decided that a little male attention might give her a positive charge. So I registered her on a dating site, and we started looking for candidates. Yes, she may have lost her sight, but she was still a very beautiful girl, and guys almost immediately started attacking us with their applications. One of the guys wrote a long letter which he said that despite the fact that Samantha had no vision, she could still see his inner world, and he really wanted to open it up to her. Oh, so cute! That one got us, and we set a day for a date. The next morning, we began preparations. I took my friend to the mall, and we bought her a beautiful dress. Then she got a new hairstyle and professional makeup. Wow, she was literally heartbreaking. This guy didn't stand a chance. Later, I took her to the restaurant and sat her down. Of course, I wasn't going to be on their date. I just had to wait for her boyfriend so I wouldn't have to worry about her. But when Jake came and said hello, He was very different than in the photo. It was completely another person. He wore a rumpled shirt and had greasy hair. He looked like he'd just woken up and come rushing in here. But before I could say anything, Samantha greeted him graciously and smiled prettily. In that moment, I realized that if I were to disappoint her now, she would never leave the house again. So I wished the guys a good evening and left. 2 hours later, Samantha called me and asked me to pick her up. And when she got into the car, her joy knew no bounds. She said how good this guy was. He listened to her, understood her, and treated her as if she had no handicaps, so much so that she even forgot about all the bad things for those couple of hours. Of course, I didn't want to spoil her evening and tell her the truth about Jake, because I hadn't seen Samantha so happy in a long time. So when she began to question me about his appearance, I described Jake as a handsome blonde man with a slight stubble that added to his beauty. Oh, I shouldn't have done that, because in her mind, Samantha had the perfect boyfriend, and she was head over heels in love with him. I couldn't allow myself to destroy her illusion, because at that moment, this guy was the only one who brought her joy. So I decided to keep lying to her. Of course, this wasn't going to last long. Time and time again, I'd help Samantha dress up and put on makeup for a date, drive her to a cafe, and this scoundrel would come in looking like a mangy rat. I think he realized that I didn't want to upset Samantha and that I wasn't telling the truth, and he started taking advantage of it. Once I took him aside for a serious talk. I wanted him to stop dating her because he wasn't worthy of her. But he just laughed in my face and said that Samantha was blind and that we should be grateful that he was even willing to have a relationship with her. Then he told me not to dare ruin their relationship or that I would regret it. No, it couldn't go on like this, and that evening I ran out of patience. I called Samantha like 20 times, but she didn't answer. And when she finally picked up the phone, she surprised me to the core. She asked me to pick her up from his house. That means that he took her to his place, you filthy scoundrel. I arrived at the right address, and Jake's house just put me into serious shock. It was some kind of shed with taped-up windows and a shoddy roof. I quickly picked up Samantha and told her everything right in the car. But she reacted very harshly. She seemed to be expecting me to say something like that. Jake told her I had my eye on him and even asked him out for coffee a few times. So whatever I was saying about her boyfriend, she took it as an attempt to take him away from her. She was so in love with him, she just wouldn't listen to me. But worst of all, she said we couldn't live together anymore after this, and that I wasn't her friend anymore. That evening, I packed my stuff and went back to my parents. Damn it, she was completely at Jake's mercy now. From that moment on, she almost didn't want to talk to me, but I still called her every day because I was worried about her. And every time, I only got a short answer that she was fine and that Jake was helping her with everything. But that was exactly what worried me the most, because he could turn her into a person like himself. And about a month later, I stepped in again. Samantha didn't answer her phone for 3 days, and then she turned it off. After another day of waiting, I decided to go see her, and I made the right decision. I stood on her doorstep and knocked on the door for a few minutes, but no one opened it. I went around the house and saw that the bedroom window was open, so I climbed in through it. I was immediately attacked by an unpleasant smell. When I looked around, I knew what was going on. The house was in a terrible state. There was trash everywhere, bottles, pizza boxes, and a huge wine stain on the carpet. Then I saw Jake amid all the trash on the couch. I woke him up screaming and asked him where Samantha was, but he said she was supposed to be in the bedroom. I realized something bad was going on and that Samantha was somewhere in town alone. So I immediately called 911 and they started looking for her. A few hours later, I got a call saying they'd found Samantha. I rushed to the station and finally saw her. God, what had become of her? She was wearing dirty clothes and her hair looked more like straw. Obviously, this was the bad influence from that damn Jake. I immediately ran to hug her, and Samantha was happy to finally hear a familiar voice. As it turned out, lately she had begun to guess that her boyfriend was just using her, and they began to fight really often. A couple of days ago, after another fight, he took her phone. That's why I couldn't reach her. And that night, she climbed out of her window and tried to find people to ask for help. but at night she couldn't find anybody and got lost in panic. I apologized to her for lying to her in the first place. If I'd told the truth, Samantha wouldn't have had to go through this terrible challenge. I hope our relationship will get back to normal and I will never do that to her again.